The star catalog called it Rubicon 119, a chill ember flickering near the spiral's quiet edge, too far from trade, too dim for ambition. Survey drones had sketched its gravity wells and moved on. It was not a place where history was expected to happen. That was precisely why the first human ark had chosen it. They named the second planet Homestead, though for 2 centuries it was anything but. The early cities were caverns ribbed with scaffolds and pipework, lit by sodium lamps and a stubborn faith that stone would one day give way to sky. The survivors of the cascading collapse on Earth, famines braided with wars, oceans turned to weather that could kill, had arrived with nothing but a compact constitution and a vow: we will not waste a second chance. Every child in Homestead learned the 3 duties before they learned arithmetic. Learn, because ignorance breaks faster than steel. Repair, because civilization decays without hands. Defend, because everything built invites the test of those who would take it. The words were carved into the entrance of the first pressure dome, the lettering still black with the soot of the industrial furnaces that fed its birth. School days began with a civic task and ended with a seminar on ethics, history, or engineering. On Thursdays, the maintenance drills became a ritual called holding the line, where teenagers replaced seals and tested valves while elders told stories of the Atlantic migrations, the salt smell of ports that no longer existed, and the humility of finite air. From the observation cupola of New Austin, Governor Meyer Alvarez watched an auroral sheet sweep the night. It was not natural. The blue-green curtain was drawn by Steward, Homestead's planet-spanning AI, which ran the magneto array that softened the star's radiation and massaged the climate. Stewart could not command, only advise. It was leashed to the Civic Compact and audited in public, every line of code readable, every decision contestable in open hearings. Here, intelligence, wet or silicon, served under law. Power without consent had ruined Earth. They would not repeat it. Far below, the ringworks glittered, a half-complete orbital ribbon, its skeletal arcs humming with foundries that smelted dust into beams and beams into ships. Admiral Noah Park lived there more than on the surface, pacing a world of vacuum doors and unmarked corridors where the true face of Homestead hid. The ringworks produced cargo tugs and agricultural platforms. Officially, it produced nothing else. Unofficially, it was the cradle of a fleet known only to the Council and those who had taken the defense oath. The tools were there not to conquer, but to keep a promise carved into the Compact's preamble: no child shall starve under a foreign flag on Homestead. Maya's grandmother once told her that the American frontier was not a line but a habit: move, make, mend. Homestead had taken that habit and refined it. The weekly town halls, the school juries, the rotating service that gave every citizen a season of unglamorous work, air pump duty, algae harvesting, seal inspections, had welded strangers into neighbors. They argued like family and voted like adults. They grew tomatoes in red dust and played zero-G stickball in the dome's shadow. They paid for their civilization with their time, and so they prized it. At dusk, a class of 10-year-olds gathered around Annika Bose, the chief systems engineer, as she peeled back a maintenance panel and showed them a breathing world's anatomy. "A civilization is a machine you live inside," she said, tapping the braided conduit with her knuckle. "The first freedom is the freedom to fix it." A boy asked why aliens had never visited. Annika smiled, half pride, half worry. "Because we asked not to be found." She pointed at a black tower on the horizon. "That's a quiet lantern. It's a liar. It tells the sky that we are cold rock. That lie kept us alive while we learned to deserve this place." Maya looked back to the aurora as it rippled and thinned. The quiet lanterns had whispered for generations, but lies, even wise ones, have expiration dates. Trader rumors already named the district around Rubicon a gray lane, where ships vanished from logs and navigation records grew fuzz around their edges. Every statistician in New Austin had the same graph pinned above their desk, a rising slope of attention. Stewart drew her eye to a new icon blinking at the system's rim, an asymmetry in background radiation consistent with a drive wake. Admiral Park's message arrived before the alert finished chiming. "Contact probable. Vector inbound from the galactic interior. 14 signatures. Cruiser mass." Meyer exhaled. She thought of rivers cut through bedrock, of turbines turned by patient water, of the way Americans had learned, painfully, how to bind ambition to law. "We always knew the day would come," she said to the empty cupola, and to the memory of those who had died so that somebody could say it here. "Let it find us worthy." She tapped the intercom and spoke the words the compact required when the three duties braided into one. "All stations, stand to civil alert. Begin first contact protocol. We will be seen as we are." Far away, at the edge of Rubicon 119, thin wind of light, something large folded space like a hand closes. Homestead's long anonymity ended, not with a siren, but with the quiet dignity of a people who had prepared to be judged. The morning after the alert felt wrong in the way a quiet house does when a storm is making land among trees. The market stalls still opened on New Austin's promenade, but vendors wore comms buds bleeding news at the edge of hearing. The smell of griddle cakes and recycled coffee hung the same as any day, yet groups gathered around the plaza's big public display, where Stewart translated orbital telemetry into a dance of symbols ordinary minds could read. 14 glyphs marched inward, slow and certain, like chess pieces that believed the board belonged to them. Admiral Park rode the spine tram to the Ringworks Defense Hub and found Commander Len Gutierrez already unfolding holos over the central table. Battle lattices, legal briefs, broadcast scripts. The defense oath required not just competence but memory. They had studied 100 imperial doctrines from 1,000 histories, Achaemenid and Roman, Spanish treasure fleets and gunboats on the Yangtze, the triage of convoys against U-boats, the hard bargain of deterrence. You could not inherit America's mistakes without also inheriting its corrections. The hub's wall carried a mural from an old civics primer, a wind-gnarled tree with a motto beneath E pluribus unum. Out of many one, out of one duty. Thalori Dominion, Len said, highlighting drive signatures. They like unregistered systems, push a legal claim, station a fleet, offer the locals a protectorate with tribute. Their demos of force are theatrical, recorded, helps at council hearings later. Then we'll give them better theater, Noah said. He expanded a web that shivered across the system like frost. Bring up the chiaroscuro lattice. The lattice was Homestead's strangest invention, a net of polarized metastructures seeded throughout near space, each a switch in a planetary circuit. Alone they were harmless. In chorus they could bend, blind, or blur, turning weapon locks into guesses, target tracks into phantoms, radar returns into poetry. It was not cloaking so much as misinterpretation. The lattice did not hide the truth. It convinced hostile eyes that truth was elsewhere. On the surface, Annika Bose stood on a catwalk in Alto Verde Reactor Hall with a ring of apprentices. The coolant fountains whispered and pulsed. The air smelled of hot metal and green lake algae, a scent all homesteaders associated with power and lunch. When you feel afraid, Annika said, check your fittings. Fear is a story. Fittings are facts. She handed a wrench to a girl whose hands trembled with the weight of the day and saw the tremble steady. Facts, then feelings in that order. If you keep that, you'll outlive every empire that outguns you. Governor Meyer Alvarez convened the open forum in the amphitheater under New Austin's dome. It wasn't theater. The compact demanded town hall before war footing, and if there was no time, you made time. A fisherman asked why they could not remain invisible. A teacher said invisibility turned a people into an accident waiting to be discovered by someone without patience. An elder recited a line from a speech by an earth-born president about the long arc of the moral universe. A girl in a soccer jersey asked if she would still have her game Saturday. They told her yes, because if soccer stopped then the thing they were defending had already died. They voted on a resolution that had been drafted 5 generations ago and amended every decade since. If foreign force enters Rubicon 119 uninvited, Homestead will declare sovereignty, demonstrate capacity, refuse conquest, and offer lawful terms. The ayes carried by 91%. The 9 who dissented were recorded, thanked, and tasked to audit the broadcast for clarity. Disagreement turned into work, as the compact intended. Above, the ringworks unfurled petals, ore catchers magnetized for any ship that tried to slingshot debris as a kinetic weapon. Internal bulkheads sealed, not with panic, but with the simple motion practiced each quarter during holding the line. In classrooms, students watched a stream curated by the Civic Office of Literacy. A visual essay that cut between the incoming signatures and a timeline of Earth's slow education in power, journeys from Selma to the moon, a rover on Mars, a flag folded at Arlington, a mother's hand on a textbook, hands in a machine shop, hands on a ballot. When the Thalori cruisers slipped past the outer lanterns, Homestead did not shudder. It breathed. Steward transmitted the first contact packet encoded in the common tongue. The locals call this world Homestead in the Rubicon 119 system. Population 188 million. Cooperative Republican governance under the Civic Compact. We claim sovereignty by ancient right of inhabitation. We desire peace. We do not consent to occupation. The lead cruiser angled, a shark that had found heat where there should be ice. In the defense hub, Admiral Park folded his hands behind his back and felt the weight of the oath settle into the quiet places beneath his lungs. He thought of a civics teacher in San Diego who once told a fidgeting boy that courage wasn't a roar. It was the act of speaking steadily while your knees knocked together. He spoke steadily now. Bring Skylark squadrons to Ready 5. Arms cold. Broadcast a courtesy window. We begin as neighbors. Len grinned, a sliver of teeth and fatigue. And if they insist on being landlords, then we'll remind them, Noah said, that free people pay their debts in exact change. Captain Krish Vornar of the Thalori Dominion was built like the doctrine he obeyed, lean, economical, and proud of never raising his voice. His flagship axiomatic had a bridge like a chapel, all spare steel and holiness of purpose. 14 cruisers bracketed it in a precise geometry designed to awe small minds and comfort large ones. He had claimed 6 systems this decade with this formation. He expected a 7th. Unregistered human settlement, his intelligence officer said, pupils narrowing to process the flood of data. Populace, significant civil engineering, broadcasting a sovereignty claim. Krish did not laugh. The Dominion did not laugh at claims, only at failures to enforce them. Transmit notice under Council Statute 12. We will inspect. If their governance is not recognized, the system is open to claim. I, said communications. Notice sent. They reply with law citations of their own. Case history from pre-Dominion arbitration. They are fluent. So are parrots. Krish rose. Approach on Vector 3. We will observe their compliance. On Homestead, the open forum continued in the amphitheater even as the Dominion notice scrolled overhead. Meyer Alvarez stood at the center with a hand on the seal of the compact etched into the floor. She wore no uniform, only a plain jacket with a patch that said citizen, because rank on Homestead was a hat you borrowed and then put back. The stamp of American civic religion was everywhere. The ritual stubbornness of procedure, the impatience with any power that refused explanation, the confidence that a public educated in facts could face fear without either flinching or striking first. Under Statute 12, Maya said to the room and the cameras, inspection requires consent. We do not consent. We offer a parley at 4 ship lengths distance, transmissions recorded with safety guarantees for both sides. She lifted her eyes to the lens. We assume good faith until proven counterfeit. In the defense hub, Admiral Noah Park traced the chiaroscuro lattice like a conductor coaxing an orchestra from tuning into a song. The lattice's nodes blinked live, each a little promise of mischief. Across the table, Len Gutierrez brought up a second overlay, the consentware envelope. Homestead's cyber doctrine was simple and old-fashioned by the standards of the glamorous exploits taught in hacker folklore. They did not break systems. They implemented consent ruthlessly. Dominion cruisers ran a deterministic OS engineered for command obedience. The envelope presented itself as the captain the computer wished to obey, signed with credentials assembled from the Dominion's own procurement leaks, corrupted supply chains, and discarded manuals. When imperial bureaucracy touched the frontier, it left fingerprints. Homestead had spent a century collecting them. Window opens in 7 minutes, Len said. Skylarks read green. Noah remembered the first Skylark prototype leaping between calibration buoys, its skip drive humming like a kettle drum, space buckling and knitting in microspasms. Every physicist in the room of no said it shouldn't work. The test pilot said it worked just fine. The thing about frontiers, Noah thought, was that what shouldn't work sometimes did when you tried it with clean hands and stubborn hearts. Broadcast the courtesy, he said. Thalori screens flickered with an image. Meyer Alvarez in the amphitheater, aurora glimmering faintly through the dome's skin. Her tone was patient, legal, and unmistakably in charge. Dominion vessels, we recognize you, we do not submit. We will demonstrate capacity and restraint. Depart and no harm follows. Remain and be recorded complying with or resisting lawful terms. On the axiomatic, Captain Krish let politeness cool into contempt. They misunderstand their position. Lock target arrays, power batteries to readiness. If they posture, we will prune. Sir, sensors blinked. We're experiencing phase noise on focus beams. Compensate. Krish did not raise his voice. We have done this before. He had not done this before. The lattice let his beams see ghosts. His target lock embraced a reasonable facsimile of a corvette that did not exist, while 6 very real corvettes repositioned on axes the axiomatic's tactical plot labeled forbidden, because that geometry depended on drives his computer recognized only from theoretical annexes in textbooks it had not been updated to read. At Alto Verde, Annika Bose watched a child finish a repair and sign the work order with block letters. She folded the paper and slid it into the wall slot that fed the archival chute. "We keep the paper," she said, "because when the power's out, memory must be lighter than air." The child nodded gravely. Above them, the Dominion's doctrine met the compactness of a people who had learned to keep promises one wrench stern at a time. Krish Vornar felt the first real, unfamiliar emotion in years, curiosity tinged with respect. "Pause advance," he said. "Request parley. If they are civilized, they will." His comms officer swallowed. "Sir, our request routed elsewhere." "Elsewhere? To our own systems." The consentware envelope opened like a handshake inside a glove. The first Skylark came into view the way a card trick comes together in a close magician's hands. There, not there. Absolutely there. It was small by cruiser standards, all edge and intent, its hull a wingless weave that drank starlight and gave back outlines like rumor. It rolled on an axis that should have made its crew paste and didn't, because the skip drive swelled a pocket of gentler physics around the cockpit where human bodies smiled at inertia and inertia smiled back. On Axiomatic, Captain Krish kept his tone bland. "Demonstrations will end," he said to no one in particular, and signaled fire. Nothing happened. On the ringworks, Len Gutierrez ticked boxes on an old-fashioned clipboard. "Batteries still report ready, sir," he said aloud to the room, "but their fire control loop is obeying our hold semantics. It believes its captain ordered discipline." "Good," Admiral Noah Park said. "Let them feel the virtue for once." The Skylark blossomed into 12, Skylark Flight 2, call sign Barnstormers, and draped themselves through the Dominion formation like a string of notes written for hands that loved a piano. They did not strike. They drew lines. A corvette slid between 2 cruisers at a distance that would have scraped paint if paint dared stay on in vacuum, and left a vapor of polarized particles that blossomed into a geometry. The Thalori combat computer did not have a name for an so-called error. The computer reached for a doctrine book that was not there. The book had been removed politely by processes that only did what they were authorized to do by credentials the system believed because its world had been built to kneel when a stamp appeared. The public feed went live from the amphitheater. Meyer Alvarez did not gloat. Americans told their children that sportsmanship mattered more when you were winning, and Homestead took that seriously. She explained the law. She explained the facts. She explained the options. "You may depart without prejudice," she said. "If you remain, we will relocate you to a holding orbit and disarm your capacity to harm. We will not injure your crews unless you force us to break our oath." She paused, letting the translation finish on the Dominion band. "We do not require you to like us. We require you to leave." The Barnstormers performed their last figure, a 3-dimensional knot that folded and unfolded around the Axiomatic's dorsal spine. Someone in the amphitheater gasped, not at the danger, but at the joy of watching something done well. A child in a soccer jersey lifted her comm and whispered, "That's beautiful." And the whisper got picked up by the public mix, and an old woman in a mining town 2 hemispheres away cried because she remembered a rocket on a Florida strip of sand, and an announcer saying go and the sky obeying. Captain Krish's tactical display spat apologies at him in machine syntax flavored with Dominion majuscule. He had never read an apology from a gun before. He tried to be angry and failed because something in him recognized a boundary that could not be argued with, consent enforced by art. He asked for a private channel. It opened to Meyer Alvarez and a blur of legal counsel and teachers and mechanics behind her, the way government should look, experts and citizens in the same room, no mystery about which was which. "You have humiliated a Dominion task force," he said. "We have recorded a conversation about boundaries," Maya replied. "Your descendants might thank us." Her courtesy stung worse than mockery. "What do you want?" "Departure," she said. And a message carried clean. Homestead in Rubicon 119 claims sovereignty by right of inhabitation and development. We will trade. We will help build. We will meet law with law and force with proportionate restraint. We hold ourselves accountable under the compact. We invite any decent polity to read. Above the amphitheater, the aurora flared as the chiaroscuro lattice relented and showed the Dominion fleet the stars as they truly were. The consentware released the firing loops with a signature that resolved to a line of text in Thalori legal to-do, audit supply chain. Homestead left them their dignity in a single bureaucratic shame. "Sir," Krish II asked softly. "Orders." Krish Vornar had taken his oath in a room where triumph hung in portraits. He'd always believed the frontier was an address at which you knocked and spoke loudly. He looked at the corvettes nestled like parentheses around his ship and understood that the frontier was a test graded by those who lived there. He bowed his head, not to a human governor, but to the discipline in his own chest that said a good officer knows when to retreat intact. "Plot egress," he said. "Record everything. We will petition the council, and we will revise our books." When the fleet turned, Skylark Flight 2 peeled away in a flourish that felt less like victory and more like a promise kept. In the amphitheater, Maya let her shoulders sag for the first time. The cheers rose up, not for dominance, but for relief that their children would play on Saturday. Noah Park closed his eyes and thought of an old teacher and a boy whose knees had knocked. He would find that teacher's name in an archive tonight and send a thank you into a mailbox that would never be checked, because gratitude is also a form of law. Across the spiral, feeds clipped the demonstration into 100 edits and 1,000 opinions. Some called Homestead dangerous. Some called it arrogant. Some called it American in the best sense of the word, a blend of fierce independence and public ritual that insists power bow to rules written by citizens. The Galactic Council opened an emergency docket. Traders changed their routes and their prices. On a pale blue world many light years away, a late-night anchor put on an old tie and told an astonished audience that a lost colony might have found the thread of who they had wanted to be. At midnight under the dome, Meyer Alvarez recorded a message for anyone listening. She did not raise her voice. "We are not a miracle," she said. "We are what happens when people accept that freedom is made of chores. We invite neighbors who understand that to meet us halfway." She ended the feed and walked alone through New Austin's sleeping market. A maintenance drone clicked past. A civics poster flapped gently in the conditioned breeze, and the aurora, written by human hands and held by human law, ripened the night with quiet color. Tomorrow would bring petitions, delegations, threats, and opportunities. Tomorrow would require the long work of peacemaking. For tonight, Homestead kept watch and kept faith, as free communities do when the door has been tested and remains on its hinges. The Grand Assembly of the Galactic Council had seen wars debated, alliances broken, and empires humbled, but rarely had it trembled the way it did after the Homestead incident. The amphitheater of Thesha Prime, with its vaulted ceiling of crystal and cascading banners of 50 civilizations, now echoed not with deliberation but with outrage. At the heart of it all lay the footage. It had been captured in pristine clarity by both Dominion recorders and Homestead's deliberate public broadcast. 14 cruisers, symbols of Thalori dominance, rendered powerless without a single shot fired. On every looped playback, human corvettes danced in impossible formations, engines warping physics with casual defiance, while Governor Meyer Alvarez spoke as though she were reading from a legal handbook, not staring down a fleet. The Dominion delegation stood furious, their ambassadors' four jaws opening in a hiss that vibrated the very air. "What you have witnessed," Ambassador Schath thundered, "is not restraint but domination. Our vessels were shackled like cattle, our crews humiliated before the eyes of the galaxy. This so-called Homestead has usurped authority it does not possess and weaponized technology beyond the Council's oversight. If we do nothing, what becomes of order? What stops others from declaring sovereignty wherever they please?" Murmurs and shouts filled the air. Some delegates nodded in sympathy, but others leaned forward with curiosity glinting in their eyes. Not everyone saw humiliation, many saw opportunity. Dr. Cal Vexnar, a physicist representing the Corvani Scientific Union, activated his holopad. A projection filled the chamber, showing the slowed trajectories of Skylark corvettes. "Colleagues, examine these vectors. They are not cloaked or hidden. They are simply beyond our mathematical frameworks. The humans have not just iterated upon our models, they have rewritten them. This is not piracy, it is progress." Ambassador Kara of the Harmony Collective spoke in her characteristically measured tone. And yet they showed restraint. They could have destroyed those ships outright, yet they disabled, disarmed, and offered exit. We must not mistake discipline for weakness. What they demonstrated is more dangerous than raw violence. It is mastery with a conscience. Schath slammed a clawed hand onto his desk, sending sparks from his embedded translator unit. "Conscience. They hacked our vessels as if they were toys. What law governs when another species can rewrite your command codes and broadcast your failure across every system? Mercy." His voice dripped venom. "Mercy is irrelevant if they already control the battlefield." The chamber dissolved into chaos. Some shouted for sanctions, others demanded immediate military coalitions, while a minority whispered of sending envoys, of reaching out before Haven's hand closed around others. The Speaker of the Council attempted order, but his voice drowned beneath the cacophony, and then the room fell silent. A new transmission interrupted the debate, not authorized, not filtered. It was Homestead. Governor Alvarez stood once again in her amphitheater, citizens gathered behind her in plain clothing. The scene was not staged, it was raw democracy on display. Engineers sat beside farmers, children beside elders. The governor's voice was calm, carrying the weight of centuries. "For 300 years, we have asked for nothing, we harmed no one. We built quietly in the dark, turning stone into soil, fear into unity. When the Dominion fleet arrived, we did what any people of dignity must do. We defended ourselves, but without cruelty. You call this arrogance. We call it survival. We claim not what is yours, but what we have built. We ask recognition, nothing more. Her eyes swept the assembly as though she knew they watched. If you are afraid of our capacity, recall that power without principle is what drove us to exile. We built safeguards into our machines, our laws, our very way of life. Our compact binds us tighter than any empire binds its citizens. If you see danger, see also restraint. If you see strength, know it was earned by generations who refused despair. We do not seek empires, we seek neighbors. The feed cut. The hall erupted again, but the tone had shifted. For the first time, delegates whispered not of erasing Homestead, but of what it would mean to live beside it. When the first transmissions reached Earth, disbelief reigned. People had grown accustomed to thinking of themselves as a species stranded in decline. Governments bickered over dwindling resources, and the dream of space had receded into nostalgia. Humanity, in the Council's eyes, had been a minor member, tolerated more than respected. But then came the videos, Skylark corvettes shimmering like myths brought to life. Dominion cruisers rendered helpless, their command systems turned against them. And above all, the voice of Meyer Alvarez, firm, disciplined, rooted in law, not in bluster. In New York, Times Square overflowed with thousands staring at holographic displays replaying the confrontation. A chant rose, "We are not weak." In Nairobi, students painted murals of the aurora over homestead skies. In Sao Paulo, families gathered on rooftops, watching pirated streams as though awaiting fireworks. The Earth Council convened an emergency summit, fractured though it was. President Sarah Williams stood at the dais, voice raw with emotion. "Colleagues, we cannot ignore what we have witnessed. A lost branch of our people has returned not as beggars but as builders. They offer us a mirror. Do we shrink from it, ashamed of what we let ourselves become, or do we rise and join them?" Opponents raised fears. Would Haven dominate Earth, reducing it to a junior partner? Could their technology overwhelm already fragile governments? Then Dr. James Chen, descendant of Admiral Chen, stepped forward with a datapad carrying proposals from Haven. "They offer us restoration, terraforming systems to heal oceans, algorithms to stabilize climate, reactors clean and infinite. But they ask in return that we not kneel. They demand partnership, not dependence. They want us to contribute, not only knowledge, but culture, creativity, the spirit of a people who once dreamed beyond stars. They know the price of disunity. They will not accept it in us." For hours, debate raged. Yet outside, the people had already chosen. Crowds lit candles, painted banners, and sang songs long thought forgotten. A sense of pride rekindled, not in military triumph, but in the proof that humanity could rise from ruin. On that night, for the first time in generations, Earth lifted its gaze upward, not with despair, but with hope. In the ringworks, Admiral Noah Park traced his hand across the mural of the tree and the words carved beneath it, "E pluribus unum." Out of many, one. The phrase had been born on Earth in a fragile republic, and yet here it had endured, etched into the heart of a fleet that now commanded fear across the stars. But Park knew power was heavier than steel. It tempted arrogance, invited corruption. The galaxy's eyes now fixed on Homestead, weighing whether these humans were liberators, tyrants, or something new. The Council of Haven gathered in New Geneva's amphitheater. Chancellor Alvarez opened the floor. Dr. Annika Bose, the systems engineer, argued for caution. If we flood the galaxy with our technology, we create dependencies. They will lean on us until they resent us. If we hoard it, they will fear us until they strike. We must walk between, share knowledge that uplifts, not knowledge that enslaves. General Robert Hayes countered sharply. Restraint invites predators. Already scouts test our borders. We should reveal less, fortify more. Strength, not transparency, will protect our children. The chamber hummed with tension. Alvarez listened, her expression thoughtful. Then she spoke. Our ancestors fled Earth not because they lacked weapons, but because they lacked unity. They had firepower, but not restraint. They had ambition, but not humility. If we abandon restraint now, we prove them right to leave. We must be strong, yes, but also just. She quoted from a text preserved since Earth's founding republic. As our case is new, so we must think anew. The vote carried. Haven would share cautiously, defend firmly, and lead by example, not by conquest. Admiral Park left the chamber with the weight of the decision pressing on his chest. He knew the most dangerous war was not against alien empires, but against the arrogance that power whispered into human ears. 6 months after the Dominion humiliation, the galaxy gathered on Homestead. Delegations from 30 worlds descended onto New Austin, expecting spectacle. They found instead a plain amphitheater, open to the aurora-lit sky. No golden banners, no armies paraded, only citizens seated beside their leaders, as if the entire world were one family hosting guests. Governor Meyer Alvarez stood at the center. No crown, no armor, only the patch that reads citizen. Her voice carried clear. People of the galaxy, we are not conquerors, we are not subjects, we are builders. We came from a wounded world, and we learned that freedom is not a gift but a chore, performed daily in the sweat of hands and the honesty of votes. We do not seek empires, we seek recognition. We offer partnership, trade, and knowledge to those who meet us in good faith. But to those who would take, hear us well, you will fail. Unity is our fortress, justice is our sword. The words spread like fire. Translations poured across networks, into the ears of species that had dismissed humanity as primitive. Some saw arrogance, others saw a principle, but none could deny the message. Humanity was no longer peripheral. On Earth, fireworks painted the sky. In the council chambers of rival empires, advisors rewrote threat assessments in hushed voices. And on Homestead, a girl kicked a soccer ball in the plaza while above her, skylarks traced new constellations. The star Rubicon 119 burned quietly as ever, but its light now carried a different meaning. It marked the place where humanity ceased to be forgotten, where they declared themselves not as subjects of the galaxy's order but as authors of their own. And Alvarez's final words lingered like prophecy. The future is not inherited, it is made. We have made ours. Now choose, make yours with us or against us. The galaxy will remember what you decide.